To this story now, U.S. President Donald Trump has nominated a conservative activist and media critic as his next ambassador to South Africa. Leo Brent Bozell III is the founder of the Media Research Center, an organization that works to identify liberal media bias. While President Trump has yet to make the announcement, the nomination was confirmed by a congressional website indicating that the nomination was received in the Senate and referred to the Committee on Foreign Relations. For more on this, we're joined by SABC News correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Peace in New York. Sherwin, so we understand Senate has confirmed the nomination of Bozell. What more do we know about him?
If I heard you correctly, the Senate has not confirmed Bozell. We are basically at the beginning of a process here. And what we can confirm is that the next ambassador to South Africa is unlikely to be a Joel Pollak, who many have argued was campaigning for the role. So Leo Brent Bozell III, let's share with you the little we know about him. He's an American conservative activist and writer. He's the founder of a center called the Media Research Center, an organization, Mfundo, that identifies liberal media bias. According to Wikipedia, Bozell founded the Culture and Media Institute in 2006, a branch of the Media Research Center, the organization that he runs, whose mission is to reduce what he claims to be negative liberal influence on American morality, culture, and religious liberty. From the Media Research Center's website, Mfundo, he's played a crucial role in countering left-wing bias in news, media, and popular culture, revealing the left's agenda to undermine traditional values, restrict individual liberty, and stifle private enterprise. Alongside this effort, MRC champions free speech by taking on big tech companies that aim to suppress conservative voices. Now, I reached out to Clayson Moniela at the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. He tells me that they were not given the customary traditional heads up on who the nomination would be. He tells me that we are still, quote, having to regroup and look at the nominee's profile and do a proper vetting. We understand that DIRCO, the South African government writ large, has the ability to reject a nomination. It seems unlikely in the current context that that would happen, but they get a no or a yes vote here. And that process now also at the beginning. A little bit more about Bozell. His son was sentenced to 4 years in prison for being part of the rioters, Mfundo, that invaded the U.S. Congress when they were certifying Joe Biden's election victory on January 6, 2021, after Trump lost the 2020 election. But of course, as you well know, President Trump has subsequently commuted or pardoned a number, essentially all the Capitol rioters, and that included his son Leo Brent Bozell IV, who was convicted of 4 years in prison for invading the United States Congress and destruction of property. But of course, he was released on January 20th this year after that executive order by President Trump commuting or pardoning essentially all the rioters on that day.
Now, Sherwin, his nomination comes, of course, at a time when relations between South Africa and the United States are at an all-time low. Does it seem as though, or what would be the sentiment around this type of an individual? You've just listed that he is basically running a media entity that would identify bias, but liberal bias in this instance. Would you say that...
Well, let me...
Yes, you can continue, Sherwin.
My apologies for interrupting you there. Yeah, I mean, so we know a little bit about, the media work that he's done. He's also a prolific author. I'll read you some of the titles of his books. But I think to your question, right, at the center of this disruption we are seeing between Washington and Pretoria is a number of issues, but including South Africa's genocide case and the allegations against Israel at the International Court of Justice. What we've also learned about Bozell is that he used his website, the Media Research Center's website, to issue a personal funding appeal to Americans to help Israel after the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th, 2023, arguing that the United States was, quote, morally bound to help Israel in her existential moment of need. Part of that appeal, he indicated that he was donating $1,000 of his own money to this, and he was appealing to Americans to support essentially the humanitarian effort to support Israel through this, what he called existential moment of need. So that might be, reading the tea leaves here, indicative of where this person will be leaning in terms of his engagement with South Africa.
Yeah.
They seem to find themselves at opposite ends of the spectrum as it relates to Israel, and that might be very much at the center of why this nomination has come to the fore. I can also tell you that in January, Trump nominated the very Bozell and named him the next CEO of the U.S. Agency for Global Media, but that nomination, we understand, was withdrawn on Monday, and then, of course, the subsequent nomination to the Senate in terms of the South African position was received today. Some of the books he's written, he's a prolific author. I'll just read you some of the titles. Co-authored a book in 2019, and this is the title of the book, Unmasked: Big Media's War on Trump. In 2003, he co-authored Whitewash: How the News Media is Paving Hillary Clinton's Path to the Presidency. And in 2004, quote, Weapons of Mass Distortion: The Coming Meltdown of the Liberal Media. So very much a conservative media critic here, has been highlighting what they believe to be liberal media bias. And of course, he appears to be a big Israeli supporter in the context of what is going on. And so that might be indicative of why this nomination has come to the fore.
No doubt he's quite the conservative. But then to the process itself now. You say the matter was before Senate, but it's been referred now to the Foreign Relations. Just talk to us about that. And you're saying it's essentially at the very first phase.
All ambassadors, all members of Trump's cabinet, all members of the federal judiciary, they all go through a rigorous Senate confirmation process. It'll be no different for the ambassador to South Africa. There will be a hearing, a public hearing at some point, where he will take questions. They tend, with sort of lower level ranking ambassadorships, smaller countries per se, they tend to do them in groups. And so you might have 3 ambassadors for various countries receiving, questions from the United States Senate. But given the Republican majority in the Senate, it seems very unlikely that this process won't move forward. The story now moves to South Africa. They, of course, have got wind of this nomination through the media. Zane Dango is currently in the United States on G20 business here at the United Nations. He gave a press conference earlier today. Of course, the nomination was not known at that point. It is very much breaking news, and certainly the indication from Durka at this point is that this is news to them, and they will now do a vetting process and procedure. They will engage with the United States as to whether they accept the nomination and are willing to move forward here, which seems likely, given the scenario right now where South Africa is being very cautious of how it approaches its relationship with the United States.
Sherwin, thank you very much for that reportage. That's SABC News correspondent Sherwin Bryce piece. They're just talking to us on that developing story, breaking, in fact, of the nomination of Brent Bozell as ambassador of South Africa, at least United States ambassador to South Africa.